Welcome to Geigenomics. This episode is going to be discussing lockdowns. And to give a overview of the lockdowns were imposed to flatten the curve. This meant reducing the spread of the virus and decrease the amount of hospitalization rates in order to not have the hospitals be overrun with COVID patients, much like Italy. And I need to give my opinion on the lockdowns. And I'm against the lockdowns, 100%. The first thing that I need to mention is the children. I think that's the most important part, in my opinion. And when you lock down children, some of the results of having children being at home instead of at schools or at sports where they normally would be is domestic abuse. We have not just more domestic abuse, but we have children abuse because they're being stuck with their parents, and now you have parents drinking more because there's not much else to do, and they take it out on children. That's fucked up. So, going back to economics, Henry Hazlitt states that the test of a good economist is not just seeing the consequences that are seen, but also the unseen consequences. And one of the unseen consequences of this lockdown issue in this pandemic is the deaths that do not come strictly from COVID or the coronavirus. The first example is the death of the elderly from being sent back into their elderly homes. We had governors, 4 of them in particular, forcing these elderly into their retirement homes, and I don't know what the number is, but there was a lot of them that died due to this. They were basically put into concentration camps where they died. And I think those governors should be held responsible. Another unseen consequence is the unemployment and the loss of businesses, small businesses in particularly. Corporations are fine. Corporations will receive bailouts. But it's the small businesses that are the main ones getting closed down. And it's not reflected in the stock market because the S&P 500 only reflects the top companies, the top corporations. But the small businesses, I don't know what the number is again, of the small businesses that have gone out due to the lockdown because there's no business. And then when you lose your business, when that's taken from you, now we have additional deaths of despair. These are deaths due to suicide. And I'm pissed. Because this is fucked up. But not only that, the lockdown itself is unconstitutional. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a constitutionalist. Again, it's a magical piece of paper that was written in the 18th century. And I think it is not binding on any one of us. No one's met a founding father. And their words should not have any implication directly on my life. But Fauci, who no one should trust basically incentivized some governors to rip up the Constitution and start putting people on house arrest. That's exactly what happened. This whole thing was a power grab by the government. The government, what we don't understand, what people don't understand, is the government is risk averse. So they're incentivized to exaggerate these things. And it goes hand in hand with the media. The cathedral puts on this show of fear-mongering and getting people to cower in fear and go to the government for safety. But the government does not help. This was a power grab. They forced people into elderly homes, and all they're looking at is now the amount of people that catch the disease and the amount of deaths. But the issue is they're incentivizing hospitals to mark people that die as COVID deaths financially because they get more money from it. And the problem is, yeah, okay, we can spend all our time worrying about COVID cases, but there's other things that lead to death. And heart disease and cancer are leading causes of deaths in the United States. And we're shutting that down for people. So we're not really reducing deaths. All we're focused on is this one disease. And that shouldn't be our main focus. But there's all this hype around it. But it's exaggerated. It's just naturally exaggerated. And the problem is, when you allow governments to take care of healthcare and these types of things, they create these blanket layouts. And it's not at the individual level. At the individual free market level, companies are able to adjust at what they need to do naturally. In a free market equilibrium, individuals and their individual businesses risk, they assess the level of risk that's needed, as well as insurance companies would actually compensate people to quarantine if they thought people are at risk of harming their families, because they don't want to pay a claim. So they'll pay you to go quarantine up in this nice place, and maybe they'll throw you $2,000 a week. I don't know what the free market equilibrium would be, because we don't have that. Under statism, they throw $1,200 a month at people. And we have all these consequences that I stated earlier. But the problem is, we don't even know if herd immunity is what's needed for this disease. We don't know. So, basically what I'm trying to say is, employee safety is a market phenomenon that's due to capitalism. And the rise in labor standards comes from capitalism. It doesn't come from decrees of the government. These things were being adjusted to based on consumer satisfaction and security and safety and security, and employee satisfaction and safety and security before the government implemented anything. All they did was shut stuff down and then mandated things adjust, but it wasn't natural. Naturally, grocery stores were already adding compensating hours to the elderly before the government mandated anything. Naturally, the grocery stores were putting up plastic barriers for their employees before the government mandated anything. So, I mean, the government just screws things up. And now that we have 30 to 40 million people on unemployment, and if you just look at the 20th century alone, when you have people on unemployment and then the government creates jobs, it doesn't end well. And that's what I'm pissed about, because the government just did this massive power grab, and it's lowered the quality of life and the standard of well-being for so many people. And it goes into this mass hypnosis through the cathedral and the mainstream media of scaring people into this idea of new normal and wearing face masks, and that's just not natural. It's not, and we shouldn't think of it that way, and it shouldn't be long lasting. But they're gonna try to make it long lasting. This is just how governments operate. This is how statism operates. They need to control the minds in order to control the bodies. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, you just got to see the truth. You just can't blindly trust the government to take care of this. That's why, well, if we're looking at poor countries, some countries, their governors and presidents said that we can't afford a lockdown. They told their people that the disease doesn't affect poor people because they can't afford to lock down. But America has some accumulated capital and a Federal Reserve System kind enough to print trillions of dollars to give to people. But mainly, most of that money is going to corporations, bailing out the corporations. And it's robbing the American people, and it's fucking sickening. And now in the media, we have preferential treatment of what's essential and what's not essential. And I'm telling you, property is an extension of life. So everything is essential. Specialization is a part of life. And to say that's not essential is disrespectful. It's unreasonable. And frankly, it's on the part of the government pathetic. And it's more pathetic to see people championing closings of businesses when those people need these businesses to put food on their tables, not just for them but for their kids. And I've seen where this goes. When you have this type of unemployment and people going on welfare, this kind of shit results in starvation. And not the good kind. Mainly children starvation. And I don't want to see that shit. That's why I'm against the lockdowns, because I'm fucking pissed that the government just took a massive power grab, sent trillions of dollars to corporations, and this has resulted in deaths not just from a disease, but from other things, like deaths of despair, like child abuse, and I hope to God, not child starvation in the United States.